Hello everyone, and welcome to the first of the series at Women at Work. My name is Sneha Boobna. I am an M&A consultant at Deloitte, Germany. I'm working together with Sipping Thoughts on this series. I think most of you already know what Sipping Thoughts is, but for everybody who's new here, Sipping Thoughts is a multi-platform media company which was set keeping in mind real women and real thoughts. We're a space to create a network of women for women. We're introducing this series of Women at Work in partnership with Qween, where we want to provide women with knowledge, tools, and most importantly, experiences from other women. The idea is to engage the community of women in active and inspiring conversations. So, with this, I would like to invite firstly Neha Shah, who's the co founder at Qween. Neha, do you want to just introduce yourself and talk about Qween?
Hello everyone, I'm Neha Shah, co-founder of Qween. We at Qween are a platform for women to get skilled, empowered, and find meaningful opportunities. So we hope that you can benefit from all the different opportunities that we provide on our platform.
Thank you, Neha. So, along with Neha, we have three other panelists today. We have Sakshi, who's the National HR Manager for Reliance Commercial Finance. We have Krithika, who's the COO of Feminist Approach to Technology. And we have Parveen. I don't think she's joined in yet, but she would be here soon. And she's the Chief Legal Officer at Mahindra Lifespaces. So we're looking forward to some very exciting conversations here, and yeah, share those with you. So if you have questions, please feel free to put it in the chat, or and we would try to take up some questions as well from you. So just when we were talking about women at work, and when you're talking about the pandemic at large, we see that women have been more vulnerable to COVID-related effects when we're talking in the context of economy and therefore work. According to a McKinsey report, and not just McKinsey, but most big companies have reported this, that while most lives have been affected negatively, overall women's jobs and livelihoods have been more vulnerable to the pandemic. One of the reasons for this disparity is the already existing gender gaps. There are two things that I feel most global reports don't end up covering, though, when we're talking about the Indian context. One of them is our social setup. A lot of them are not living in joint families, are not the primary caregivers, and overall the social context is so different. And the second is the concentration of well paying jobs, which are limited just to the metro cities or maybe tier one cities. So with this, I would like to just ask you guys what, on these ground, what have your observations been? What do you think has changed during this pandemic for women?
The COVID-19 crisis has been extremely difficult for employees. Several have faced a lot of challenges, including childcare, homeschooling, responsibilities, and mental health and burnout has been also major issues that women especially have been facing. So there are significant layoffs going on. Along with that, now there is a worry about how we can get women back to the workforce with the same enthusiasm which was going on before COVID. But from our perspective, which is Qween, where we saw a huge surge in terms of needs or demands from the companies to actually find work from home resources, and women being able to do that because they already have the required skill set and talent. Now the natural choice has become to hire diversity talent. So that's why from Qween's perspective, we have seen a huge surge in need for women to get back to work.
That's an interesting point. I think, from our panelists, even Krithika, you're working very closely just on a very similar platform. You're working a lot with women directly. What are your thoughts on this?
Thank you for the question, Sneha. So, my thoughts are that this pandemic has definitely done a lot good because we don't have to we save on the travel time and we are able to spend that quality time towards the family. But at the same time, we have to. There is the truth is that we have bought office to home, so the lines have blurred, which has become quite a challenge. While it is easy to go switch off that gas when the pressure cooker, when it starts making sounds, but then at the same time you realize that people are not getting up at home. You are expected to get up and go and switch it off when there's a meeting. Well, the lightest, well, on a more serious note, I think this has actually made things easier and things more challenging for us. We are learning to talk. We are learning to draw lines. We are learning to find spaces within our home. For me personally, it was very challenging because I think that was also a time when I lost my job in between, and I had to find a job, and I joined for my new job online, and it is not very easy, given all of these challenges at home, and then you kind of manage the operation of the organization. You have to make a lot of effort to know the employees, get to know the work, understand the transition, and do all of that. And I would say that it has been a roller coaster ride for me. But it has been quite interesting in the sense that I have learned to be very assertive about my space. I make things very clear that these are my working hours, and I need to get things done between that time. But at the same time, I also realize that I overwork sometimes, which I'm trying to avoid nowadays. So yeah, so it's kind of, I would say it's good and bad at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, we women are known to be the masters of multitasking, right? But I also personally think that multitasking has gone to a whole new level, especially if you have kids, you have a family, maybe you have in-laws, so it's different. And what about setting boundaries or really taking time off or taking me time?
So yeah, so I think that is important. I feel rather it is a privilege for a lot of people. So if it is not a joint family, I would say again, joint family is a blessing, and also sometimes it becomes kind of a challenge there, because in a joint family you definitely have additional pair of hands to help you out. Like I miss my mother-in-law who used to live with me, so she would take care of the kitchen while I'm doing this. She would answer, somebody would answer the door. So now all these things have fallen on me, but at the same time, I'm sometimes able to be relaxed because I don't have to worry about the elderly, feeding them food on time and things like that. But yeah, so both these things are there. But amidst all of this, when it comes to me time, I think there was this pampering, a little bit of pampering when your mother-in-law is around, and she would, a kind of at least give you that cup of tea and ask you how you're doing and things like that. You would take a break in between because somebody is taking care of that. I think that has become a privilege now, kind of a luxury item. So I literally have to steal those, kind of short moments where I can breathe. I can just lie on my couch and watch a series on Netflix or something like that. So yeah, so that's been the thing with me.
I think Parveen, you're already here, so welcome on board. We just did a short introduction before we started. Parveen, I already know that you are balancing a lot of different aspects. So do you want to share some insights with us?
Yes. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Parveen Mahtani. I'm currently Chief Legal Officer for Mahindra Lifespace. I have two teenage children and happily married. So I'd sum it all and say that it's all buckets full and plenty of stuff to do. Yes, COVID has been challenging, not because it's increased pressure, it's because the compartmentalization that we had, where we would be either at home or at work and be able to concentrate on each of the areas that we would be working at. Those walls have been taken away, and we're expected to now do all of it at the same time, at most of the times at the same time, exactly. And that's the challenge that we're facing. So that's where it really is at. But I think with the use of technology and a lot of family support, there are forums like these where people are encouraged, people are coming together. So the collaboration, the unison, the empathy levels, all of that has gone up, which is tremendously helping how we function in our day-to-day lives.
Yeah. Thank you, Parveen. I think that's a very interesting point when you're talking about setting boundaries. I think Sakshi also had some insights to that because she's also working from home, and she's talking about families or partners. I mean, that's the other support system I want to talk about. How do you really navigate those challenges? Because we do come from that society where certain roles are predefined. Men are supposed to do certain things, women are supposed to do certain things, and as much as they are working, a lot of times they are the ones who are multitasking. So Sakshi, any points from that perspective?
Yes, Neha, absolutely. Like in my case, what I see, the family support is there. Of course, what has changed in COVID is because the domestic helps are not there, all that work normally gets dialed on to the lady in the house. So that has been a general perception. And talking through and distributing chores, dividing work amongst people, amongst especially amongst the partners and with kids, I think that is something which brings a lot of support. At least it has helped me in my case, that we have divided the kind of work which each one would do. Having said that, I think with families like us, probably it is more possible. But there could be more families where everything dials on to the lady still because she is expected to manage everything. If she was working any which way, she would have taken care of the house, right? So if she's working from home, then she has all the more time. So that's also a perception there. And I see some of my colleagues getting burnt out in the process. What has helped me, I would say, is setting those expectations very clearly that if I am going to work and if there are deliverables, I will also need time to work around it and I will also need that support at family level. So rather than directing it to every member in the family, calling it out, pulling it out very sharply because they have not been used to it, it's better to start with the partner first. He would probably understand more than anybody else, and then the kids, and the message is then out in the family that yeah, we should help. So I think COVID has brought in that family thing very sharply in most houses like ours.
I
So
think this is a common point that everybody's talking about, that family support is so important, and somehow we are able to set boundaries. We are able to say that at work, that okay, this is what we are going to finish. This is what we can. This is the time we're available at, and maybe I'll open this up to all of you, and you can jump in. But I would like to know what happens when you're not in a leadership position. When you are holding a leadership position, I think you can kind of define the atmosphere. You can define certain rules, but what happens when somebody is in a junior position? What advice do you have? Maybe Parveen, I know you are in a leadership position and you're working very closely with teams, and Neha, I don't know, anybody can jump in and
Parveen, you want to go first?
Sure, no problem. I think it's whether pre-COVID or currently the way things are, it's all about a lot of discipline, about the fact that we're at home. Are we still maintaining that routine of getting up on time? Are we dressed enough to be even present at work, or are we sitting in our house clothes? It really starts with that mental discipline first. Uh, we can always, and the brain is naturally tuned, as per psychology, to have an escapism mentality where you keep taking the easier path out and you have to force yourself and say, no, this is how I'm going to conduct myself. This is my time for the house. This is my time for the work. And you schedule it that way. So the compartmentalization, which we physically did naturally when we were at work and at home, now that you got to do it at the same time together, you start needing to do that at home also. So that there is this discipline. And let's face it, we do have these additional tasks. So how do you deal with it? Are we getting up earlier? So instead of starting the day at 7, are we starting at 6? How are we balancing and rebalancing all of that to be able to achieve it? And what's really important is not have unreasonable expectations of our own selves, to be realistic of what is possible today, what we can really deliver, not set the benchmark that I'm going to make the best dish today. I'm going to have probably roti served everywhere. I've had days where work has been so heavy that I've served bread for 2 weeks. It was not practically possible. So what was the explanation that I gave? That the bread and the roti is made from the same ingredient. That's how we function. So it's how you all adapt to be able to work in that ecosystem so that it's healthy and you're not overstretching and setting unreasonable expectations that you can never meet and set yourself up for failure.
Sure. I'm going to address it a little differently, is because the women that we work with, the women who are looking out for opportunities, they might not be at leadership roles, or they might not have a say at home where they can say, no, I would like to set these boundaries. Maybe because they are not as financially supportive as the other gender might be. So for them, it becomes a little more challenging to set those boundaries. And that's where this flexibility has been helping them to actually even be able to work. So for the women at large, the challenge before COVID was not just about being able to work out of office, but actually just have the privilege to work. So this has helped to actually be able to apply for jobs which are now available for them. And now that the partners or families are looking at that, okay, that the ladies of the house also are able to work and earn from home while balancing the house and are earning enough, that's when the respect starts coming in, and that's where they can actually start drawing those boundaries. But for women at large, I think it's a far-fetched dream to actually achieve that. So it's a slow process, but eventually, due to this pandemic, and later on, if we do happen to continue this further, it should get things better for women.
Yeah,
I agree with you, Neha, on this. Sorry, can I? Okay, so thanks, Neha. So I agree with you on this, Neha, because I think a very large section of the population are these women who are still, for them working itself, stepping out of the house itself was like, I think, a big decision, and on top of that, then you started working, and then it had to get into people's head that you actually go to office and you work as much as a man of the house does, because I think that's one thing that people are not still able to come in terms with. And then apart from that, the whole fact that you'll be sitting at home, but you will not be doing the household work, but you'll be doing something else. Like you'll be right in front of us, but I can't ask you to make that cup of tea because it's not so easy because you're engaged in something else. So it is easier said than done. As we move the higher income households, it's very easy. But for example, the kind of girls that we work with, our staff members, 90% of our staff members are from families which are from very humble socioeconomic backgrounds. They live in very small houses. They do not even have personal space. They don't have a place to sit and work. So it is actually very difficult for these girls. And we are talking about unmarried girls. At least married women, I think they would have a little bit of say. And unmarried girls, young girls, who are very fresh, 22, 24-year-old girls. I mean, your elder brother is doing something, your father is playing TV in full volume. How do you sit there and work? How do you tell them that I need that space to do my work? So I think that's where your employer needs to be very empathetic towards what you're doing. So when I'm having a call and I know that particular person is having a problem, then probably I would want to postpone the meeting, rethink the deadlines, and things like that. I feel nothing can be more important than the comfort of the person and not stressing that person over and above the stress that she is undergoing. So I would say that it's a lot, and we cannot assume that the families overnight would start understanding, because it's going to take a long time. We all know it. Like we, even in our extended families, I'm sure there are relatives who kind of ask you, do you travel a lot? So who takes care of the child when you are not around? So, we're still having those dialogues in the house. So I think realistically speaking, it is going to be from the employers to a very large extent, especially for the chunk of their staff, which is from the lower cadres and who are from such families. I think that kind of an understanding is very important.
No, that's a very, very valid point, Krithika. I also have some friends where they have younger kids, and as much as we talk about flexibility, there is a definition to what working hours are, and a lot of times they tend to coincide with the school hours. And when it comes to the decision of, who's going to be the primary caretaker of the kid, a lot of times, or I've seen it even within my friends, where some of the woman has had to take a step back and said, okay, I'm not quitting my job, but I will either go on half salary or I'll go on a part-time role. And they become that, they take up that role. So it isn't easy for them, of course. But what do you think are companies doing? And again, maybe, you all can have a different perspective to it, but are there companies doing anything to really avoid losing this talent pool?
Well, I'll talk from the experience of some of my other colleagues, not just for my organization, where the working hours have been defined for this work from home as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there are hours defined where calls will not be made. There are hours defined which is the lunch time to have lunch with the family, and those on those scheduled hours, people won't be disturbed. So these are some small things which have which some companies have adopted. Okay, and that works beautifully in those setups, especially during the lockdown when it had started, April, May, June, during those times when domestic help at all was not available anywhere, and everything had to be done within the family unit itself. Those in those days, in those times, policies were rolled out defining specificity in work hours where calls not to be made. Those were defined. So I think employers have shown that inclination to understand that if there are colleagues, both women and men, especially more for women, where they may also need to balance the other side of their lives so that they are productive back at work. I think that empathy has been shown. Of course, it's much more to happen. It's a long rope. It's a long way to go, rather. So, but these small steps have started. Again, picking up from what Krithika was saying, because that's where that was interesting. And also, when you talked about women in leadership positions can do that, but maybe not at the junior levels and all of that. I think the important point which came up was what's the contribution back to family, and most times it is measured in the economic value which the person brings back at home. So that's the challenge, and that's the line which has to be crossed. But that comparison starts कि अगर वो काम करके भी ऐसा भी क्या हो रहा है. So वो जो ऐसा भी क्या हो रहा है वाला जो issue है ना, one is the self sense of that I'm adding value to myself and I'm doing something. I'm not just sitting there. That thing has to be dialogued definitely with the partner to make him understand. And the rest of the things, most of the things which happens in the family, like my husband will have calls, and then it will be a conscious attempt in the family not to ensure that he's not disturbed. Whereas when I am on my calls, it may at times be okay for someone to come in and pop in and say something and all, and that same level of seriousness at times get loosened out. So what should we do in those small occasions? Maybe a curt look might help.
Mm-hmm.
We get bottled up because we feel कि हम ऐसे कैसे कर सकते हैं. But if we start demanding, even in leadership positions, women in whatever positions are ultimately women, and that's how the society defines them. So I think at every level, wherever you feel that there is a show of some level of inequality, not inequality coming out, please call it out. The manner need not be harsh, it could be subtle, but please start calling it out, and there will be someone in that system who will help you. I strongly believe in that. There would be someone in the system who will definitely help you, will understand the vibes, and will come forward to maybe make those small little contributions to help. Of course, employers will play their own role. These policies are coming, which means they are also mindful that something needs to be done. But beyond that, drawing the boundary, how you draw the boundaries is also something which we need to learn. We feel bad ki how can we do this, and we boil with that anger most of the times. I think we need to let go of that anger, and we need to ignore certain things. Even if comments are being made ki kids are there and who's going to look after, and people are, while they are making this question, they are looking at you as if you are the expected answer. I think we got to ignore that, and we need to not take that pressure on us. Then only things will be smoother for us. The moment we start corresponding to those looks with our own looks ki, okay, I am making myself available, I think it starts collapsing there. And that's the moment I feel where we need to clarify the expectations. They might play, they may not study, but that's fine. They cannot disturb my work area. So I
No,
think
that's true. I think somewhere it's quite important to not always put yourself behind everything else. I think there are times where you have to put yourself, and when you start doing it, somewhere around you, your ecosystem or everyone else, your family starts seeing it like that. It's not an easy journey,
Yeah.
but it's there. I mean, one of the other aspects that I see, that there are of course challenges, but there are also positives that might come out of it. There are men who've lost their jobs, and where they held this position of the sole bread earner of the family, there are women who have had to pull up their socks and go out and earn. So somewhere that positioning is changing. What do you guys think? Do you see that happening, or it's still a far-fetched dream?
If I can add to that.
Yes, of course, Parveen.
Yes. So it is. It's increasingly important, and I think people are realizing that the whole pressure that comes on the man for be the only one who's earning, it's not a competition between a husband and wife as to which position you're occupying or how much you're really earning. It's about just having something of your own to do, something which creates your own identity, something which makes you feel that this is my self worth. That's what work does to all of us. So I think it starts from first telling yourself that you're not in a race with your own husband or your spouse. You're not there to prove anything to anybody with your position of what you are doing. It's not a ladder which whoever's at the top is successful and whoever's below is not successful. Success is such a relative term. It We could be doing anything. I could just be cooking, and that is success for me, because the joy I get in serving that dish and the happiness that I see on my child's face, that is also success. So let's not do that as women to ourselves, where we start benchmarking as to what is good to do, what is not good. We need to take that away. The second is we need to stop feeling guilty when we're at work. We're guilty about what's happening at home. You're not there for the child's studies. You're not there to make something for your husband who's unwell, an in-law who's unwell, and you're guilty at work. When you come back home, you're guilty at work because you've missed a meeting. You're not there for something important. You walked off before your boss has walked off. We got to stop feeling guilty. There's only that much that we can do within those 24 hours, and as long as we do the best that we can, the intent, and I think the only thing we need to remember is that, are we true to ourselves? Are we honest with our day's work? If we feel that we go back to bed each day and we're satisfied that we did the best that we possibly could have done in that day, it really doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. And this is whether there's COVID or there's not COVID. And then you start discussing what are the non-negotiables, either with your family in a gentle way, or be assertive at work as to what is absolutely non-negotiable and you just cannot do and is an unreasonable expectation of you. And then it takes that stress away from what we're really doing.
No, that is so true. I call it sometimes the superwoman syndrome.
Yeah.
I feel like we want to do everything, and we want to be able to, excel at home and excel at work, because somewhere people appreciate it, right? When somebody is saying, oh, this woman is the best because she is managing work beautifully, she's putting in her 200% at work and 200% at home, and this is the quintessential woman. But in my opinion, I feel like that is the first thing you have to break, and you have to say that no, that's not it. At the end of the day, you are human, and not everything can be done perfectly. So some things are going to suffer. Deal with it, and it's okay.
So,
But just when and I know a lot of you have already faced challenges like this. What has worked very well for you guys or your teams when you're trying to circumvent these?
So I think to start with, for me, it has been, as Parveen said, stop having unrealistic expectations with myself. So I have this typical OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder of cleaning stuff all the time. And since the time my maid has left, I've actually gone, it starts affecting me. There's dust lying in front of me. I have to like switch off the video, take my phone, it's like the AirPods that I use. So I have to go pick up a cloth and wipe that piece. So I started telling me, no, Krithika, you can't do this. You'll go crazy one day otherwise. So number one, I think, has been to have stop having unrealistic expectation. Number two, stop being too positive about myself. I think sometimes accepting myself along with my fears, my I think my sadness sometimes with my anxiety and nervousness is very important. We are often told, by, I think it's an overhyped thing that you should not, like, you are a strong person, you should not cry. How can you? I mean, you're such a strong person. How can you think that way? It's okay, it's okay sometimes to be childish. It's okay to throw tantrums. It's okay to say, I don't feel like cooking today, I'll order food. So I think that's something that we need to do and stop having this kind of a serial bahu kind of kind of an image for yourself. You're not going to get any award. I'm very sorry. Nobody's watching you live. So that's going to kill you. And it's actually setting wrong example for the other women in the family, for the younger generation. And I think people who expect from you continue to expect. So that's something that we really not have to do. So these are two things that I do. The most importantly, and number three, I think I am very, very assertive with people that I'm with, and I also teach my other staff, my co-workers, my team members, to be assertive with their families, to tell them, to speak out, to tell them, no, I'm not able to do this, or to speak up to other people in the workplace. You need to speak up. If you don't open your mouth, nobody else is going to come and save you. There's no knight in the shining armor. So, these are some of the things that I do, and I think it really works.
Just to add to that, I completely agree with the point of speaking up. I think it's really important for us to reach out to whatever help we can get in terms of our in-laws, family, friends, or colleagues, right? So it's really important if you're struggling somewhere, or if you're stuck at a place where you really don't know how to get out of it, then reach out, speak up, and make sure that you have a solution rather than just dealing with it yourself. I think that's where we put a lot of burden on us, where we are trying to suffer internally ourselves rather than talking to our partners or peers and trying to figure out a solution by just simply talking and reaching out.
If I can just add there, I think what Neha said, we have to realize that when we ask for help, whether from a colleague or a family member, it does not make us weak. It's actually our realization of our strengths, to know this is what is possible by me, and this is what I can do only if I have the help of somebody. So there's no shame. You don't become lesser just because you asked a colleague or your manager or a junior or your family member for help to be able to do something. So once you realize that it's not embarrassing, there's nothing wrong, and you reach out for we call it help, but it's actually collaboration. Because unless you collaborate and do something, you're only going to get a better result. So your performance, whether at work or at home, is only going to go up when you have got the right people to collaborate with, to take that help with, and then complete what you really have to do, which has taken in the process that burden and stress away from you for what was originally what you thought your own task.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right, Parveen. I think a lot of things we put in our own heads, and that's also our own internal challenge to deal with it slowly and gradually. So yeah, that you're right in that context.
Yes, Sakshi, in fact, I just read something very interesting, and it says, a lot of us go through depression. What is really depression? It's phonetically deep rest, where your body is so exhausted that it's asking to switch off and take that deep rest.
Slow down.
It's really a negative word. It's just about resetting what you need to rest about and restart again.
Yeah, so yeah, that's the thing. Like, we got to slow down. We got to slow down with our own selves. That we have a lot of to do for our own selves. Ki ye bhi hai, this also, that also. I think we have to strike it off ourselves. Ki what's not going to happen, and that helps. As far as to the question which Sneha was asking, how does it work with teams and all? Uh, what we experienced and we experimented with, especially in my team, what we did, we got to know of the timings. So since I have a larger family, so to say, so a few more jobs are a bit more on me. So I have a certain specified time when I got to finish it, and one of my team members does not have those responsibilities, she has a few others. So then we have blended those timings, and so we are aware what timing I would be able to log in, what timing she would be able to log in, and then our important discussions happen during those timings. So I think discipline and flexibility both have to be blended well, and that will help teams also. So I got to know what are their issues and how are they timed during the day. I can't see them. They are all virtually connected. Some of them are working from home, from other places, not in Mumbai. But then one needs to know what's happening in their life, and that mental wiring, okay, after 10:15, I think she'll be available. That calculation should build in. So I think it's more about building that connect also with your own team members to understand when they might need comfort. So if you have to schedule a meeting, maybe you can be mindfully fixing it at a time when they could be available so that they can take care of their families. That is also one kind of a support which you can which one could lend. They may not ask for it. If you have already scheduled a meeting, they may not be able to say that I may not be available because all others are available. How can I say I don't have time and I have other priorities? So that challenge comes up, that pressure builds on. So as managers, I think it will be important for us also to be mindful, and that is gender neutral, either it is a man or a woman. Managers also got to be very mindful of these small little things of blending discipline, flexibility, and work demands.
True.
So
So,
I think to that point, Sakshi, I really want to add something here because, one of the practices that we follow, as a responsible employer is uh, we at the end of the day, like if I'm receiving mails at the time when I'm not supposed to, like, if it's like beyond the working hours, I make it a point that I reach out to them the next day and find out why were they working so late. And similarly, if I receive mails on the weekends, I tell them not to do that and I do not respond. And I tell them that they need to take a compensatory off. I mean, that's our work culture. We make sure that they take a compensatory off, even though, I mean, just because they're at home, we can't assume that their minds are at rest. So you literally need to put your mind at rest. And I think one more thing that we follow is often during our meeting, any weekly meetings, we have check-ins that we do. We start our meeting by saying, this is how I'm feeling today, in 2 words. So if there is something that is repeating meeting after meeting, every meeting somebody is going on saying that I'm depressed, I'm feeling alone, or I'm feeling stuck, we try to talk to them. We have a group of social support people. We try to connect them and we try to work with them. We speak to their supervisors. We do things like that. So we never, I mean, their reporting on mental health issues and challenges is never for the word's sake. I mean, we take every word very seriously, whatever they tell us, because we know that, the burnout is true. Somebody, I just saw in the chat that somebody's talking about burnout. And I think it's the responsibility of the employers to make sure that we as women, if we are leaders, we are supposed to make sure that the people working with us, men or women or people of any other sex, you're supposed to make sure that they don't burn out. And it's your responsibility to have that structure and system, use technology well, make sure that we are not doing donkey work, but we are doing smart work, basically.
I think when I listen to actually all of you, one common point is really being aware.
Yes.
Being aware of people's issues, being aware or being empathetic at times. So I think a lot of people are going to reach out to all of you and want to work with you because it sounds amazing, and I would love to work with someone like that. But on the topic of reset and change, we had a question which came up from Nikita Sardana, and I thought it would be a good time to put this up. She asked, I would like to know if this is a good time to change your job. Should you consider career change right now in the pandemic environment? Maybe Neha, do you want to try answering that?
Sure. So right now, as the industry, I mean, as due to COVID, there have been a lot of layoffs as well. And since the companies are facing a lot of financial crunches, you might want to consider leaving the job only if you have something in hand. So if you already have something in hand where you are already shortlisted or have a job offer in hand, then definitely, yeah, it's a good time to jump to another position. But if you are looking at just leaving your current job and then moving on, I think it's a little too early to do that right now, because there's a huge talent pool which is already getting laid off, so you might want to be careful on that part.
I'd like to add that, Sneha. I think I'm an example who's changed jobs during COVID. I shifted from the Tatas to the Mahindras in July, which was peak of the COVID season. And I totally agree with what Neha is advising. It's very sound advice. Only if there is something in hand which seems, whether a better profile, a better package, all those factors which work for you, shorter commuting distance, probably a more empathetic employer, whatever factor really works for you. And if you're getting that, then it's not a bad time to shift. But I think everybody must realize that the economy is going to take now a couple of years to recover. So if your requirement is a financial requirement, or you're somebody who gets very upset if you're going to be out of a job for long, then you really need to think whether this is the time to let go. It's the very common saying of a bird in hand is worth two in a bush, right? That you'd rather just hold on to where you are because it's a known devil. You don't want to be from a frying pan into a fire situation and be dealing with larger issues that you were unprepared or unplanned for, because you really can't time by when now you're going to be able to get a job back.
That's true. I agree with that as well. I mean, as much as sometimes change is good, it's good to really know what you're doing next, especially when things are uncertain. Um, so there is one more question from Chitra Rekha. Chitra, I think you are unmuted. Maybe you can ask the question.
Yeah, it's a very thought-provoking session. My question from all of you is like, what practices do you follow for self-connection, self-care, any spiritual practice like you follow for stress management? Because we all are working as superwoman, doing household work, managing our work also from home. So, if any practices if you follow, which can help us also. Thank you.
Thank you, Chitra, for the question. Sakshi, do you want to take this
Yeah,
question?
Chitraji, I will take your question because it is interesting for someone to ask what are the tips. It's kind of asking ki, what are the tips that you follow, and practically there are no tips. The first whole month of this COVID had gone trying to find out what works for me. Okay, the complete mess and everything, juggling between different responsibilities. So I won't say there are many tips, but there are age-old wisdom from parents which we have not yet followed, and now we have started following, which is working, which is like getting up on time and finding some time for maintaining health. So some fresh air, walk, morning walk, some exercising, something to do with maintaining physical health is extremely important. When you are there in the fresh breeze of air, that works on your mind very well. So I think ऐसा कुछ हम करें जिसमें health को हम primary रखें, it will help COVID, non-COVID, and definitely in these COVID kind of situations, because the more we keep hearing ki somebody lost the job, then there is a certain tension in the house. What would I be the next, or would my partner be the next, or somebody else in the family? Those things do sit in the head, and there is some level of anxiety around all those things. But taking care of one's own health physically, and that then starts getting into other things. So getting up on time, I would again repeat, is something which works very well. You get a whole day to plan for yourself. Being up early, rising up early will definitely help. You get a whole day to plan, and then plan your work, prioritize them. It will help a long way. And ignore certain things. आपको अगर मन में भी ऐसा लग रहा है ना कि आई डोंट थिंक दिस रियली वर्क्स फॉर मी, और इट्स टू मच ऑफ एन एक्सपेक्टेशन ऑफ माई सेल्फ विच वी आर रिपीटिंग एंडलेसली, आई थिंक वी गॉट टू इग्नोर दोज थिंग्स फ्रॉम अवर टू डू लिस्ट. It's okay for those things to sit on a weekend, maybe not on a daily basis. So we got to cross most of the items from our own expectations, and then we are light. So it's like a boat which has too many things filled in. उनमें से आप चीजें निकाल निकाल के फेंकोगे तो अपने आप वो हल्की हो जाएगी और तैर पाएगी. It will stay afloat. So a lot of things which we have packed in ourselves, we got to take it off. Getting up early will definitely work, and taking care of one's physical health, it will translate into mental health and all of the different channels of energy. So that would be something from me, if you're asking.
Thank you, Sakshi. I think, a lot of points that came up today were rather thought-provoking or just interesting. I mean, sometimes they're just very easy things to do, and we
That's why I
don't
said
pay so
parents
much
teaching
heed to
wisdom,
it.
which we have
Yeah,
not done
no,
yet.
100%. I mean, a lot of points that were brought forward even by others, we know it, but we just don't practice it. So I think a lot of it comes down to trying to practice it and say that, yes, these are my non-negotiables. I think with also this last question, we've almost come to the end. Maybe we'll just do a round of takeaways, with everybody, and then we'll wrap up. Sakshi, do you want to start?
I'm just thinking maybe I'll take some time and think
Okay, then
over it.
maybe we can start with someone else. Parveen, Krithika.
Okay, so my takeaway has been not just from this session, I think from the whole pandemic, the lesson that I have learned is, ethnicities are different, geographies are different, everything is different, but the challenges are the same. The lives of the women and men, I think, are the same. It has been like literally, it has been thrown off gear. So for us, I think the new normal is not just adopting technology and all of that stuff. New normal is also about accepting ourselves the way we are, and trying to live life to the fullest. Because I think that fear that Sakshi was talking about, who will get the pandemic? I might get COVID, my partner might get COVID. Oh my God, what's going to happen? So definitely, it's not going to. I think this illness has definitely taught us a lesson that it's not just about the general hygiene and health and things like that, but it is also about overcoming your fear and kind of also accepting the uncertainty that is around so many things, and hence living your life every day the way it should be, to the fullest. So I think that's been my takeaway, and that's how we all should live. So on that point, I think Chitra, right? You asked how do I de-stress? What I do is, if I'm very stressed, I sleep. And the second thing that I do is I dial anybody's number, any of my friends, my childhood friends, and I talk to them endlessly. And again, my batteries are recharged. So if that can help you.
Yeah. For me, the biggest takeaway is where we've learned what our priorities are in life. We really have to set back and see what is really important for us. We probably were doing a lot of things which where we were running and running because the rest of the world is running. But is that the race that we want to run? Is something that each one of us has had ample time to think about and do only the things which are important to us, which means spending time with your family, or it means just your own quiet time about how much you really want to do at work. All of it has, which was a draining experience, and we were just running. We were mechanically running the week, then we were mechanically running the weekend between our social life and our home life and the children's life, and the whole week from Monday to Sunday would be over. And you look at it now, and it's given us a chance to think that, okay, what are the things I can take away from my life which were negative, which I don't need to do now, which don't give me happiness. Some of it which was probably even materialistic and not required. And do only the things which make us happy, which even simple things make us happy. The things that we took for granted make us happy. And that reset in how we function to do things which give us peace is what matters. And that's what we need to do. Just reach within ourselves, not elsewhere, and look for that happiness within ourselves. I think you just have to put your hand on your heart and ask and be true to yourself and say, is this something which I'm happy doing? If not, then you need to think this is whether you really need to go on with it, or is it something that you need to stop? It's also about communication, whether with your friends, with your partners, with your family, about how you're feeling, because you are you have that much time together. At work, we were unhappy with some colleague or some boss who fired us. So we're going to walk away and talk to it about at home as to, this is what he said and how could he have spoken to me that way. Something happens at work, we used to go to work and tell our work colleague, my husband spoke to me in this way, my child spoke that way, and we were doing that. Now, when that's not there, you have to start talking to the person who's made you feel bad and reconnect that relationship again.
True.
I completely agree with Parveen. Actually, you were actually using some of my words, what I wanted to say, but it was basically for me during lockdown, it was more like a lot of time to reflect upon myself in terms of what do I really like, what do I enjoy the most, and what were some of the stupidest things that we were doing while we were just commuting here, like from one place to the other for things that didn't matter. Also to discover in terms of what you're really passionate about, what you think you're really good at, and trying to figure out a way in terms of how I could build that further. So that break actually allowed to give that thought internally for myself to actually build upon it. So I think that's something that everybody, if they haven't experienced, they should, in terms of reflecting and trying to figure out what they really want out of this entire pandemic or their own life, right? So without being more philosophical, I think it's more about just keep trying, asking yourself that question every day. What do I want out of this? One day you will eventually get the answer.
Neha, there are also a lot of support groups, like example, these sessions which are there, which we didn't have access to earlier, or it would have just been a paid conference that you have to attend. The support that you find within like-minded people, so whether on Facebook or on LinkedIn, when you start becoming part of groups that you connect with, so I'm part of group of a laughter yoga or a kindness club or a self-awareness group. These are the areas which interest me apart from work. And you start reading those positive messages that come into your Facebook page or your LinkedIn page. It starts changing your outlook. And you know what you're feeling that day, and suddenly you see a message which is probably exactly what you needed to hear to change that outlook that morning of how bad you were suddenly feeling, and you tell yourself, now shake yourself out of it and come on, and we can do it.
No, thank you, Parveen. Sorry, I'm cutting you a little bit. We're running out of time. So maybe just last point, Sakshi, if you have a one-line takeaway. I mean, you already gave some tips to Chitra, which were great. And then we can just quickly wrap up.
For me, what has worked, I will call that it's a tip or whatever, but what works for me is continuously learning. That is something which has been a major takeaway in this COVID time. So I realized that what gives me happiness is if I'm learning something continuously. So different classes I joined one after the other. So I finished small courses, and then I picked up onto my passion, as Neha was pointing out. I had an interest in music, so I thought, why not? Let's get into that. Started my music classes. So that's something which de-stresses me. It also impacts the family when they see that, someone at uh, s- if my son is seeing that if mummy can learn, then why can't I learn? So that message starts translating somewhere. So it gives me happiness definitely into my things. I discovered my passion for writing. So I have written phenomenally now. So I've written a lot by now. So that has given me a lot of time. So I think in these times, there is so much of stress outside and so much of negativity also coming from outside. Many a times it keeps hitting you. What gives you peace is pursuing one's passion and taking out time for that. So my
Oh,
takeaway would
definitely.
be COVID, non-COVID, whatever. But when the situation around goes extremely crazy, maybe go back to your own self,
Yeah.
and then you will
No,
find peace.
that's something I also personally did. I felt it was a good time to reflect. It was a good time to set priorities. And when you're in the, you know, daily race, you tend to forget a lot of other smaller things which are so important.
Mm.
So that's definitely great to hear. And that brings us to the end of the session. I would firstly thank all of you because we got some really, really good, valuable insights. There were things which were just reinstated, but they were so good to hear today. And I hope it was very helpful to the audience as well. And please continue with our Women at Work series. We're going to bring in more topics like this every week, and we hope it's helpful to you. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sneha. Thank you, Neha. Thank you, Sakshi. Thank you, Parveen. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you all so
It
much.
has,
Grateful to be
yeah.
here.
Yeah, it has been an absolute pleasure to be here. It again connects back to the thought that there are a lot many whom you could kind of help, and you may seek help, seeing what's happening around. And then there is a lot of sense of gratitude, because if there are these so many issues with so many other women, and if I am a little less disturbed on that ground, then I think I am fortunate enough, and I have a lot of gratitude for my family with that. No, on that note. So yes, thanks for inviting us here, and thanks for allowing us to get connected to so many other magnificent women out there. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Krithika, Parveen, and Sakshi. And thanks, Neha, for making this happen.
Thank you, everyone. See you next time.
Bye.